The smoke rose thick and black over the ruins of Seven. 3 days of fighting had turned the human outpost into a graveyard of twisted metal and broken dreams. Bodies lay scattered across the ground like fallen leaves after a storm. Some wore the gray uniforms of the Terran military. Others were soldiers, their blue skin now pale in death. Kate Marshall moved through the wreckage with careful steps. Her boots crunched on broken glass and spent ammunition casings. Blood stained her uniform in patches of red and darker colors she tried not to think about. She was a medic, a healer, but there had been so little healing these past 3 days. Mostly, she had held hands and whispered comfort to soldiers who would never see home again. She was 29 years old and felt like she had lived 100 lifetimes. The had come without warning. Their ships had dropped from the sky at dawn, and with them came the creatures that haunted every human soldier's nightmares. The war beasts bred for one purpose, to kill everything in their path. Kate had seen her first on the morning of the attack. It had burst through the wall of the medical tent like the wall was made of paper. 4 meters tall, covered in scales as black as deep space, with 4 eyes that burned like dying stars. It had killed 3 soldiers before the heavy weapons team brought it down with concentrated plasma fire. That was just the first one. Dozens more followed. Now the battle had moved to the eastern sector, leaving Kate to search for survivors in the western ruins. Her commanding officer had told her to fall back, but Kate could not leave without checking one more time. There might be someone still alive under the rubble. There might be someone she could save. The afternoon sun beat down on her neck as she climbed over a collapsed wall. Her canteen was empty. Her medical supplies were running low. Every muscle in her body ached with exhaustion. But she kept moving, kept searching, because that was who she was. Kate Marshall did not give up on people. She heard the sound when she was halfway across what used to be the supply depot. It was quiet, almost lost in the distant rumble of artillery. A soft, high-pitched cry that made her stop in her tracks. It sounded like pain. It sounded like fear. It sounded like something very young and very hurt. Kate changed direction and followed the sound. She moved past the burned skeleton of a transport vehicle, past a crater where a missile had struck the ground, past the body of a soldier whose eyes stared at nothing. The cry grew louder as she walked, leading her toward a section of collapsed building at the edge of the depot. She saw the adult first. Kate froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything except stand there in the open like a target. The beast was massive, easily the largest she had seen. Its scales caught the sunlight and seemed to drink it in. Its 4 eyes, each the size of her fist, glowed with that terrible orange fire. Its claws, curved and sharp, could cut through armor like scissors through cloth. But they did not attack. It stood perfectly still over a pile of debris, its head lowered, its body rigid. It did not even seem to notice Kate standing 20 meters away. All of its attention was focused on something on the ground. Kate's hand moved to her sidearm, but she did not draw the weapon. Something about the scene felt wrong. Not dangerous wrong, but different wrong, out of place. They should have charged at her the moment it saw her. That was what these creatures did. They did not hesitate. They did not wait. She took a slow step forward, then another. The crying sound was coming from the pile of debris beneath the adult. Kate could see movement now, something small struggling weakly under a fallen support beam. It was a cub. Kate had not known had cubs. In all the reports, all the briefings, all the combat footage, no one had ever mentioned young ones. The creatures were weapons bred in laboratories deployed as tools of war. At least, that was what everyone believed. But the small creature pinned under the beam was clearly a child. It was the size of a large dog, covered in the same black scales as its parent but softer somehow. Less armored. Its 4 eyes were dimmer, clouded with pain. Dark blood pooled beneath its broken body. The adult made a sound that Kate had never heard before. a low, rumbling moan that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. It was the saddest sound Kate had ever heard. It was the sound of a heart breaking. Kate understood then what she was seeing. This was not a war beast standing guard over a fallen asset. This was a mother watching her child die. She should have walked away. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to leave quietly and let nature take its course. The cub was clearly dying. Its injuries looked fatal, and the mother was still a killing machine that could end Kate's life with a single swipe of its claws. But Kate Marshall had not become a medic to make smart, safe choices. She had become a medic because she could not stand by while something suffered. Human, alien, or anything in between. Pain was pain. Fear was fear. And that small creature with its dimming eyes and its weakening cries was afraid. Kate took a deep breath and stepped forward into the open space where they could see her clearly. The mother's head snapped up, those four burning eyes locking onto Kate with an intensity that made her knees weak. A growl built in the beast's chest, deep and threatening. Kate raised her hands, showing they were empty. She moved slowly, carefully, like she was approaching a wounded animal, which she supposed she was. "I am not going to hurt you," she said quietly. "I want to help." They did not understand her words. Kate knew that. But something in her tone, or maybe in her body language, made the beast pause. The growl faded to a low rumble. Those terrible eyes watched her every move, but no attack came. Kate knelt beside the dying cub and opened her medical kit. Behind her, the war beast watched in silence. Kate's hands trembled as she examined the cub. The small creature lay on its side, its breathing shallow and fast. Up close, she could see just how bad the damage was. The support beam had crushed the right side of its body. Ribs were broken, pushing inward at angles that told Kate there was serious internal damage. Dark blood, almost purple in color, seeped from wounds she could see and probably from many she could not. In a human patient, she would have called it too far gone. Focus on someone you can actually save. That was the cold math of battlefield medicine, and Kate had learned to accept it years ago. But she could not accept it now. Not with those small, frightened eyes looking up at her. Not with that giant mother standing just meters away, radiating a grief so powerful that Kate could almost taste it in the air. She had no idea how to treat a. Human medicine was designed for human bodies. She knew where human organs were located, how human blood flowed, what human tissue needed to heal. This creature might as well have been from another universe. Its biology was a complete mystery. Kate made a decision. She would treat it like a human and hope for the best. It was not a good plan, but it was the only plan she had. First, she needed to move the beam. She stood up slowly, keeping her movements visible to the watching mother. The adult had not moved from its position, but Kate could feel its attention like a physical weight on her shoulders. One wrong move, one sudden gesture, and those claws would tear through her body before she could even scream. Kate walked around the cub and examined the beam. It was heavy, far too heavy for her to lift alone, but it was resting on a piece of rubble at one end, creating a small gap. If she could find something to use as a lever, she might be able to shift it just enough to pull the cub free. She found a metal rod in the debris nearby. It was bent in the middle but still strong enough for what she needed. She wedged it under the beam, braced her feet against the ground, and pushed with all her strength. The beam shifted, just a few centimeters, but it was enough. Kate quickly pulled the cub free, dragging the small body across the broken concrete until it was clear of the debris. The movement made the cub cry out, a sharp sound of pain that cut through Kate's heart. The mother stepped forward, that rumbling growl starting again in its chest. Kate held up her hands again. "I know it hurts, I am sorry, but I had to move it." The stopped. Its eyes flickered between Kate and the cub, and something seemed to pass through them. Understanding, maybe, or at least a willingness to wait and see. Kate got to work. She opened her medical kit and spread the contents on the ground beside her. Bandages, sutures, antiseptic, painkillers, blood coagulants, a small surgical kit with basic instruments. It was designed for treating humans in the field, for patching up wounds until a patient could reach a proper hospital. It was not designed for this. It would have to be enough. The cub's blood was different from human blood. Thicker, darker, with a strange metallic smell that reminded Kate of copper and something else she could not identify. She did not know if human blood coagulants would work on it, but she applied them anyway, pressing the chemical powder into the worst of the external wounds. To her relief, the bleeding seemed to slow. The internal damage was the real problem. Kate could see the broken ribs pushing against the cub's skin, and she knew there had to be damage inside. Punctured organs, internal bleeding may be worse. In a hospital with proper equipment, a surgeon might be able to save the creature. Out here, with nothing but a field kit and her own 2 hands, Kate was working in the dark. She talked as she worked. It was an old habit, something she did with human patients to keep them calm. She did not know if the cub could understand her, but the sound of her voice seemed to help. Its breathing steadied a little, and its small claws stopped scraping against the ground. "You are going to be okay," Kate said softly. "I know it hurts right now, but you are going to be okay. Just stay with me, keep fighting." She used her fingers to feel along the cub's ribs, trying to understand the damage by touch. The bones were harder than human bones, denser, but they still broke the same way. She found 2 that were pressing inward at dangerous angles. They needed to be set before they did more damage. Kate took a deep breath. This was going to hurt, and there was nothing she could do about that. She looked up at the mother, meeting those 4 burning eyes. "This is going to make it cry," she said, "but I have to do it. Do you understand? I have to." They did not respond, but it did not attack either. Kate chose to take that as permission. She positioned her hands on the cub's side, found the broken ribs, and pushed. The cub screamed. It was a terrible sound, high and sharp and full of agony. The mother roared in response, a sound that shook the rubble around them. Kate felt the ground vibrate beneath her knees. She did not stop. She kept pushing until she felt the bones shift back into something closer to their proper position. The cub's screaming faded to a whimper. The mother's roar faded to that low, rumbling moan. Kate was shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She had just set bones in an alien creature while its mother, a 4-meter killing machine, stood close enough to kill her with a thought. She was either the bravest person in the galaxy or probably both. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and kept working. The sun moved across the sky as the hours passed. Kate sutured wounds, bandaged injuries, and improvised solutions for problems she had never faced before. She used a plastic tube from a hydration pack to drain fluid from the cub's chest cavity. She used electrical tape to hold bandages in place when she ran out of medical tape. She used her own body heat to keep the small creature warm when it started shivering. Through it all, the mother watched without moving. Those 4 orange eyes never left Kate, tracking every gesture, every touch, every whispered word of comfort. The beast was still as a statue, but Kate could feel the intensity of its attention. It was waiting, hopping, praying maybe, if such creatures could pray. Kate did not know if she was saving the cub or just delaying its death. But she kept working anyway, because giving up was not something she knew how to do. The sun had moved low in the sky when Kate realized she was running out of options. Her medical supplies were almost gone. The cub was still breathing, but its breaths were getting weaker. The wounds she could see were treated, but the damage she could not see was still killing the small creature from the inside. Kate sat back on her heels and looked at the cub. Its eyes were half closed now, the orange glow fading to something dim and gray. It had stopped whimpering. That was not a good sign. When patients stopped expressing pain, it usually meant they were too weak to fight anymore. She had done everything she could think of. She had used every trick she had learned in 6 years of combat medicine. She had pushed her skills to their absolute limit and beyond, and it was not enough. The mother seemed to sense the change in Kate's mood. The The great beast lowered its head until those four burning eyes were level with Kate's face. Up close, Kate could see details she had not noticed before. Scars crossed the creature's snout, old wounds from battles long past. One of its eyes had a crack running through it, a mark of some injury that had healed but left its trace. This was not a young beast. This was a warrior who had seen many fights. And now that warrior was watching its child die. Kate felt tears building in her eyes. She blinked them away, angry at herself for the weakness. Medics did not cry. Medics stayed calm and professional and did their jobs. But she was so tired, and the cub was so small, and the mother's pain was so clear in those ancient, burning eyes. "I am sorry," Kate whispered. "I tried, I really tried." They made a sound. It was soft, almost gentle, completely different from the roars and growls Kate had heard before. It was a sound of acknowledgement, of understanding, maybe even of thanks. Kate wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She was not going to give up. Not yet. Not while the cub still had breath in its body. She looked at her medical kit again, searching for anything she might have missed. Her eyes fell on a small vial she had been saving for emergencies. It was a stimulant, a powerful drug designed to keep wounded soldiers alive long enough to reach proper medical care. It worked by forcing the heart to beat stronger, the lungs to breathe deeper, the blood to flow faster. It was dangerous with serious side effects, but it could buy time when nothing else would. Kate had no idea what it would do to the drug was made for human biology. In an alien creature, it might do nothing at all, or it might kill the cub faster than its injuries. She looked at the fatting eyes of the small beast. She looked at the watching mother. She made a decision. Kate loaded the stimulant into an injector and pressed it against the cub's neck. She found a spot where the scales were thinner, more like skin than armor, and pushed the needle in. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cub's body jerked. Its eyes snapped open, glowing brighter than before. Its legs kicked out, scrabbling against the ground. Kate jumped back in surprise, afraid she had hurt it worse. But the cub's breathing was stronger now. Its heartbeat, which Kate could feel through her hand on its chest, was pounding with new energy. The drug was working. It was actually working. Kate let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. This was not a cure. The stimulant would wear off in a few hours and all the internal damage would still be there. But it had bought time, precious, valuable time. Now she just needed to figure out how to use it. She looked around at the ruins surrounding them. Somewhere out there, her unit was fighting. Somewhere out there, there were ships and hospitals and real doctors who might be able to save this creature. But the battle lines were far away, and Kate could not carry the cub that distance. Not alone. She looked at the mother. An idea formed in her mind. A crazy idea, a dangerous idea, but possibly the only idea that might work. "You need to help me," Kate said slowly. "Your child needs real medicine, better medicine than I have. If we stay here, it will die. Do you understand? We need to move it." The tilted its head, those four eyes studying Kate with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She could not read the creature's expression. She did not know if it understood her words or just the tone of her voice. But something passed between them in that moment. A connection. An understanding. The mother lowered its massive body to the ground, pressing itself flat against the rubble. It turned its head to look at the cub, then back at Kate. Kate understood. The beast was offering to carry them. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was insane. She was about to climb onto the back of a creature that had killed dozens of her fellow soldiers. A creature that could crush her with a thought. A creature that should, by all logic, want her dead. But logic had stopped mattering hours ago. All that mattered now was the small creature whose life she was fighting to save. Kate carefully lifted the cub, wrapping it in her jacket to keep it stable. The small beast was heavier than it looked, and warm despite its injuries. She could feel its heart beating against her chest, fast and strong from the stimulant. Then, moving slowly so the mother could see what she was doing, Kate climbed onto the great beast's back. The scales were hard and rough under her legs, like sitting on warm stone. She found a spot between the creature's shoulder blades where she could hold on without hurting it. The cub lay cradled in her arms, its breathing steady against her body. The mother rose to its feet. The motion was smooth and powerful, lifting Kate high above the ground. From up here, she could see the whole ruined outpost spread out around them. Smoke and fire and death, as far as the eye could see. They began to walk, carrying Kate and the cub away from the battlefield. Kate did not know where they were going. She did not know if this was the right choice. But she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she was exactly where she needed to be. The move through the ruined landscape with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Its massive legs stepped over debris and around craters without slowing, carrying Kate and the cub through the destruction of seven like a ship sailing through stormy waters. Kate held the cub tight against her chest, feeling its heartbeat and its breathing. The stimulant was keeping the small creature alive, but she could tell its effects were already starting to fade. They needed to find help soon. She did not know where the mother was taking them. She had hoped the beast would understand that they needed to reach the human lines, where there were doctors and medical equipment. But they was moving in a different direction, away from the sounds of battle, toward the hills that rose in the west. Kate wanted to redirect the beast, to guide it toward her own people, but she had no way to steer. She was a passenger, not a rider. The mother was in control. So Kate held on, and trusted that the beast knew what it was doing. The sun touched the horizon as they left the outpost behind. The sounds of fighting faded to distant echoes, then to nothing at all. The air grew cleaner, the smoke less thick. Kate could see stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky above. The cub stirred in her arms. Its eyes opened, focusing on Kate's face with a clarity they had not had before. It made a small sound, not the cry of pain she had heard earlier, but something softer, almost questioning. "It is okay," Kate told it gently. "Your mother is taking us somewhere safe. You just rest." The cub's eyes drifted to the massive form beneath them, then back to Kate. Something like trust flickered in those orange depths. The small creature relaxed against Kate's chest and closed its eyes again. Kate felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the creature's body heat. This small beast, this child of a species humanity was at war with, trusted her. It had put its life in her hands, and now it was resting peacefully in her arms. She had never felt so responsible for anything in her entire life. They climbed into the hills as darkness fell. Kate could barely see where they were going, but the mother moved with confidence, finding paths between the rocks that no human would have noticed. The beast's 4 eyes glowed softly in the darkness, providing just enough light for Kate to see its massive head as it turned to check on them. They traveled for hours. Kate's legs went numb from gripping the creature's sides. Her arms ached from holding the cub, but she did not complain. She did not even think about complaining. She just held on and waited. Finally, when Kate was beginning to wonder if they would travel all night, they stopped. They had arrived at a cave hidden in the hillside. The entrance was narrow, almost invisible in the darkness, but the space inside opened up into a wide chamber lit by strange glowing crystals embedded in the walls. The light was soft and blue, nothing like the orange glow of the eyes, but bright enough for Kate to see clearly. The cave was not empty. Kate's breath caught in her throat as she saw them. More, at least a dozen of them, gathered in the chamber. Some were as large as the mother. Others were smaller, younger. And scattered among them, curled up against their parents or sleeping in small groups, were more cubs. This was a colony, a family, a community of creatures that humanity had been told were nothing more than weapons. The mother lowered itself to the ground, letting Kate and the cub slide gently off its back. Kate stood on shaking legs, clutching the injured cub to her chest, surrounded by creatures that could kill her in an instant. None of them attacked. They watched her with their burning orange eyes, their massive bodies still and silent. Kate could feel their attention like a physical weight pressing on her from all sides. They were waiting, waiting to see what she would do. An old approached slowly. It was the largest one Kate had seen, covered in scars and marks of ancient battles. One of its four eyes was completely dark, blinded by some long-ago wound. When it moved, there was a heaviness to its steps that spoke of age and weariness. But there was intelligence in its remaining eyes. Deep, ancient intelligence that made Kate feel like a child standing before a wise elder. The old beast stopped in front of Kate and looked down at the cub in her arms. It made a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the cave. The other responded with sounds of their own, a chorus of deep notes that seemed almost like a conversation. Then the old beast turned its attention to Kate. She stood as straight as she could, meeting those ancient eyes without flinching. She did not know what the creature wanted. She did not know if she was about to be welcomed or executed. All she could do was stand there and let them judge her. The old reached out with one massive claw. Kate forced herself not to step back as those curved talons moved toward her face. The claw touched her cheek gently, so gently that she barely felt it. It traced down her face, across her jaw, leaving a line of warmth on her skin. Then the beast did something that made Kate's heart stop. It bowed its head to her, a deep, slow bow of respect. Around the chamber, the other followed. One by one, those massive predators lowered their heads in honor of the small human woman who had saved one of their children. Kate felt tears running down her face, and this time she did not try to stop them. These were not monsters. They never had been. They were beings with families and feelings, with love for their young and respect for those who showed them kindness. The war between humanity and the had been built on lies, and Kate had just discovered the truth. Kate stayed with them for 3 days. In that time, she learned more about them than 12 years of human intelligence gathering had ever discovered. They were not animals. They were not weapons. They were people, with their own society, their own traditions, their own deep love for family and community. They had their own healers, too. Kate watched as an older female treated the injured cub with medicines made from plants and minerals that Kate did not recognize. The treatments were different from human medicine, but they worked. Slowly, the cub's strength returned. Its eyes grew brighter. Its wounds began to close. The mother never left Kate's side. Where Kate went, the great beast followed, those four burning eyes always watching, always protective. At first, Kate thought the creature was guarding her as a prisoner, but she came to understand it was something else entirely. The mother had claimed her. Kate had saved its child, and now she was part of the family. The other accepted this without question. They brought Kate food, strange fruits and cooked meats that tasted better than anything she had eaten in months. They cleared a sleeping space for her near the mother and cub, lining it with soft materials to keep her comfortable. They treated her not as an enemy, but as an honored guest. On the 3rd day, the old approached Kate with a purpose in its step. It made a series of sounds that Kate did not understand, but its meaning was clear from its gestures. It was time to go, time to return to her own people. Kate looked at the cub, now strong enough to stand on its own legs. The small creature looked back at her with eyes full of gratitude and something that might have been love. It pressed its head against her hand, a gesture she had seen parents make with their children, a gesture of affection. Kate felt her heart breaking. She did not want to leave. These past 3 days had been strange and terrifying and wonderful all at once. She had found something here that she had not expected to find. She had found understanding. But she knew she had to return. She had to tell humanity what she had learned. The war with the had already cost so many lives. If there was a chance to end it, to find peace, she had to take that chance. The mother carried her back to the human lines. It was a journey of many hours, through the hills and across the battlefield, past the ruins of 7, and toward the forward command post where the Terran forces had gathered. When they came into sight of the human positions, alarms began to sound. Kate could see soldiers scrambling for weapons, vehicles turning their guns toward the approaching threat. She had to act fast. She stood up on this back and waved her arms, shouting at the top of her lungs. "Do not shoot! Do not shoot! It is Lieutenant Marshall! Hold your fire!" For a terrible moment, she thought they would fire anyway. Approaching their lines would normally be attacked on sight. But someone recognized her voice, and the order to hold fire spread through the ranks. The mother stopped at the edge of the human perimeter. Kate slid down from its back and stood between the beast and her own people. Soldiers stared at her in shock and confusion. Officers were already running toward her, demanding explanations. Kate ignored them all. She turned to thee and placed her hand on its massive snout. Those four burning eyes looked down at her with an emotion she could now recognize: love, gratitude, hope. "Thank you," Kate said softly. "Thank you for trusting me. I will do everything I can to stop this war, I promise." They made a sound deep in its chest. It was the same gentle sound it had made when Kate first tried to save its cub, a sound of acknowledgement, of faith. Then the great beast turned and walked back toward the hills, toward its family, toward its home. Kate watched it go until it disappeared from sight. Then she turned to face the soldiers and officers surrounding her. She had a lot of explaining to do. It took months. The military did not want to believe her story. The government was skeptical. There were hearings and investigations and endless questions. But Kate had evidence. She had recordings from her medical scanner showing the cub's treatment. She had samples of medicine that scientists analyzed with growing amazement. And she had her own testimony, steady and unwavering, about what she had seen in that cave. Slowly the truth began to spread. They were not weapons. They were slaves, forced to fight through means that were still not fully understood. They did not want this war. They wanted to be free. Faced with the exposure of their crimes, had no choice but to negotiate. A ceasefire was declared. Peace talks began. 1 year after Kate Marshall saved a dying cub on a battlefield, she stood in a great hall on the neutral world watching history being made. Human diplomats sat on one side of the table. Leaders sat on the other. And between them, forming an honor guard unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, stood a line of warriors. Kate recognized one of them immediately. The mother. Her 4 orange eyes found Kate in the crowd and held her gaze. Standing beside the mother, tall and strong and healed, was the cub Kate had saved. Not a cub anymore, but a young adult, its scales gleaming black in the light of the hall. It too looked at Kate, and she could see the recognition in its eyes. After the signing ceremony, the commander approached Kate. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and silver eyes that held centuries of arrogance. "We have studied your species for many years," he said coldly. "We believed you to be weak, soft, controlled by emotions that make you vulnerable." Kate said nothing. She simply waited. "We were wrong," the commander continued, his voice bitter. "Your weakness is your strength. You showed compassion to an enemy, and that compassion has defeated us more thoroughly than any weapon ever could." He walked away without another word. Kate smiled and looked across the hall at the mother and child. The war was over. Peace had come. And it had all started with a medic who could not stand by while something suffered. She did not think of herself as a hero. She never would. She was just someone who had made a choice, in a moment when it mattered, to heal instead of harm. Sometimes that was enough to change the galaxy.